Hey everyone, today we're going to cover the most powerful and most popular comps in TFT right now for patch 14.21. More popular than the star player in the high school sports team, but also more powerful than the player who's actually carrying that team. So starting off in the S tier, we do have a bit of a reroll patch right now. It's probably some of the stronger leveling patterns, and we'll cover how to play each and every one of these after the overview. But in the S tier right now, we have Jinx and Wukong at the top. Very strong stuff. If you hit 3-star Jinx and Wukong, I do consider it kind of like an Exodia comp because it's so deadly. The risky part about this comp is that while I have seen 2 players go for it, it's very rare that both of them get Jinx and Wukong 3-star. But this comp is so good, I gotta put it at the top. Next up we have is Portal Ryze. They really didn't touch Portal Ryze in the past couple of patches, so if you do get a +1 Portal Spatula, just hard forcing Portal Ryze is going to be the way to go if you have any bit of decent items. Ryze Flex, it's the best 4 cost in the game right now. It's at a 4.34 average placement, but the play rate is the highest out of all the damage dealing units. You could say, oh, Nami's very high too and has better average placement, but Nami's really just used as the late game cap of a Reroll Mage comp because that's going to be the next build that's strong right now. So even though in the data Nami is better, Ryze is just the premier 4 cost right now. She's also good in the Eldritch comp, which is in our A tier, but before that we have Reroll Veigar, another Mage comp, and also the Faerie Kalista build. Faerie Kalista got a decent nerf, so it is not as strong as it was before, but it definitely is still playable. If you have no idea what to play, going for either the Ryze build and the Flex build or the Kalista build could be a good idea. But after that, we have Multistriker Reroll, lots of different versions there. We'll cover all 3 of them. Kogmaw Reroll, a surprise because we haven't seen too much Kogmaw recently, but people have discovered he works really well in the 2 tanky build, which we'll cover in a bit. Without the augment, he actually still does well though. Again, you could either trust me or check the data or ask someone else. But he's doing well because Honeymancy's doing well. But in terms of 3-star average placement, he's also really high. But he is a bit of a situational pick. High horsepower Lillia, you might ask yourself, if you watch the patch preview that I did a couple of days ago, you might ask yourself, how did high horsepower Lillia go from the C tier last week to the A tier this week without receiving any buffs in the patch? The reason why is because Ahri got buffed. Ahri is viable now. We'll cover Ahri Reroll as well, but the best version of her is going to be with high horsepower Lillia. Very powerful stuff. After that, we have Zap Attack Blitzcrank, just always a solid hero augment this whole set. Ahri Reroll, Shapeshifter Flex, Karma Gwen Fiora, Witchcraft Fiora Karma, kind of like the same comp there. Decent 4 cost options, but a bit situational, I'd say. Deja Vu Galio still solid, but it's a bit risky to go for because all the Mage players steal your Galios. So before you pick your Galio augment, scout around a bit, see if there are other Mage players. The good news about Mage Reroll is that it is much more powerful with the +1 Mage emblem. So if they don't get some insane augment, normally it means that it's a bit weaker, which means that players might not go for Mage Reroll even if they have a decent start for it. Warwick Reroll, despite getting his best item removed, he got compensation buffs a little bit, and he's actually decently viable. I'm not going to say he's going to win you games automatically, but he works really well with like anger issues. Even without anger issues, I've seen him do decently well. He's in like the mid to low part of the A tier, so it is not going to be like the greatest comp ever, but definitely if you get the right spots for it, he's going to be good. Pyro Varus, 5 Pyro is an insane power spike, always has been. So if you get +1 Pyro, it's definitely worth going for. Spin to win Wukong. Oddly enough, even though Jinx Wukong is the best build right now, spin to win isn't that great. It's still good. I think it's at like a 4.3 right now. I'm actually going to do a quick augment overview after we go through this list. And then we have Sugarcraft, Situational, Arcana Varus. If you have to play Varus, you got to do what you got to do. We're not all lucky enough to get Ryze. Blaster Vanguard Hwei, solid 3 cost reroll comp, and then Chrono Karma at the end of A tier. 6 Chrono, still good, but not as good as it was before. It's not auto win anymore. In the B tier, we have Frost Pyro Olaf. It hurts myself a little bit by dropping him down, but he's definitely seen better days. Ziggs Reroll, okay. Witchy Wild Poppy, okay. Warrior Katarina Rerolls, decent. Akali Nyla, it got buffed a bit, but still not good enough to get out of the B tier. Fast 9, highly situational, and then Pillars of Flame Shen, very average. Build difference sucks. Syndra Cassiopeia, well, we could see the Syndra and Cassiopeia down here. If you do end up playing Syndra, you mainly play her in an Eldritch build, not so much with like a Shapeshifter build. Molten Caramel Rumble is going to round out the B tier, and let's not even go over the C tier. Some good comps to one trick this patch, I'd say would be either the Mage Reroll comp, Ryze Flex, or Faerie Kalista, same as last week. It's a bit risky to one trick Jinx Wukong because if you get contested, it really hurts. And then for the Exodia comps, I'd say Jinx Wukong is there. Ryze with 6 Scholar is there, Kogmaw 2 Tanky, and Fast 9ing. And then good beginner comps or players below Diamond is going to be the Mage Reroll and Multistriker Reroll. Now, I wanted to go over the top augments, and I think I'm going to start doing this every patch. I'm not going to go over the whole list. I'm just going to go through like maybe the top 10, just so everyone knows what to do if you get offered one of these, which I think is pretty helpful because I've watched some people's games, and when they get offered one of these high tier augments, they either pick them because the data says it's good and then they don't know what to do with it. They don't pick it because they've never played it before. Luckily for this week, most of these are straightforward because they're pretty trait linked. So maybe I go a tiny bit deeper into the list this time. Higher education, obviously this is a scholar augment for some sort of scholar build with Ryze or Ahri. Faerie Crest, go for a deep Faerie comp. Maybe 7 or even 9 Faerie if you get another one. Sugarcraft is situational, but if you ever start the game with a ton of items or are on an item portal, you can take this. Witchcraft Crest, a lot of people are playing Witchcraft right now with the Fiora builds. Fiora works with a bunch of different carries such as Karma or Ryze, and that's why people are taking this. Mage Crown is just one of the best comps right now, so you get a +1 for free. Portal, Force Portal, Eternal Growth Plus. This one does really well, but let's look at regular Eternal Growth. So if we type that in here, we'll see that regular Eternal Growth 4.42, but the plus one is 4.13. The reason why the plus one is so much better is because if you're taking this in stage 3, it means you already have a ton of Shapeshifters, which means you just got the perfect augment for a comp you already have a start for. So this data is heavily biased. So if you see the regular Eternal Growth, it's still good, but it's not as good as Eternal Growth Plus. And the reason why, again, is because of bias in the data. Arcane Conduit, if you are going some sort of arcane comp, maybe like the Ahri build or the Varus build, this one can only be offered in stage 3 and 4. It's obviously like an auto take. One important note is that it makes your Arcana champion stronger, and you also want to put only 2 items on all your Arcana champions because you get a free item on each champion if they're holding 2 of them. So pretty much just like throw 2 items on all your Arcana units, and then whoever you have extra, whoever else you're running with the team, stack them with 3 if they're not arcane. Be as friends, a lot of Honeymancer builds are good right now. There's a Kogmaw build, there's a Zap Attack builds. But you may notice in the data already, people are only really having great success with this on stage 3 and stage 4. And this is because they probably got the Nunu augment or the Blitz augment in stage 2, which again means that you got the perfect thing afterwards. Shields Up is pretty solid. Vanguard's a pretty good frontline right now. You could also force the Warwick build. And there are some like flex comps that use some sort of DPS units with a bunch of Vanguards to tank up front, and you can play any of those. Zap Attack, just go the Zap Attack comp, which we'll cover in a bit. Learning to Spell, this is one of the best Mage augments, so you just take this, put Seraphine and Soraka on your board. Maybe it also works with Ahri, but it's going to be best on Mage, and you are good to go. Spellcaster's Toolbox, this just gives best in slot items to all the AP comps out there right now, whether you're running like Portal Ryze, Ryze Flex, Mage Reroll, Veigar Reroll, Ahri, Karma, like these 2 items are just incredible on all of these comps. So that's why it's that high up there. And then Honeymancy, obviously force Honeymancy, and then 2 tanky, you just hard force the Kogmaw build. So now that we know all the good augments and hopefully we pick them and play them correctly, let's go into the comps. By the way, I have a quick note. I had the unfortunate experience of spectating some of my platinum friends. I wasn't really actively coaching that much, but I made some comments here and there about the game. And there are a lot of basic things you could learn just by going on this website and knowing where to place all the units. I'm not just saying that because I benefit from this. I'm saying this because people legitimately know what the comps are, but they don't know every unit that goes in it, and they don't know approximately where to position them. I'm not saying you have to copy every single positioning because things obviously change based on whatever your game is, but a lot of simple questions can be answered by just like alt tabbing to the website during your game, because that's what I witnessed this week. One example is the Reroll Mages build, where you like having Vex solo frontline with the stone plate, but this player literally put 2 champions out like that, and I'm just like, move them back. Not the end of the world, but if you don't know, you're losing like a ton of value on your Vex because Vex generates a bigger shield the more units that are targeting her. And also, if you build a stone plate, which pretty much almost every guide out there recommends on Vex, you're losing a ton of value on stone plate because it has the same effect. But I literally saw this and like, I told them about it and it took them like 3 rounds to change it. And then like 3 games later, made the same mistake. So I don't know how to help people when that happens. But if you're ever confused on a comp, just like check the website quickly. It takes like 2 seconds. Like, yes, I benefit from it. Bunnymuffins.lol/meta. But honestly, you benefit from it too if you don't know. Speaking of stone plate, we have the stone plate with Wukong here with the Jinx Wukong reroll. You pretty much just play a bunch of hunters and preservers for this, and then you stack stone plates on your Wukong. Wukong benefits a lot from having armor and magic resistance. That's why you build these items on him, so it's like the combination that gives him the most. And then in the backline, you want some sort of armor penetration, either from Last Whisper on Kogmaw, Even Shroud on Olaf, and then Rageblade and Runons on your Jinx. Third item doesn't really matter too much. Some like Gigaforce augments. Gigaforce meaning you can just force the comp. If you get one of these augments, it's going to be Category 5 and Hunter Frenzy. Both these comps, you can just throw these units into your team planner and pretty much just autoplay from there. But in all other situations, you want to ease into this comp. You can do that if you built a Rageblade early in stage 2 and then you're thinking, maybe I could go Kalista, maybe I could go Ryze, but then you see a bunch of Jinxes, or maybe you built a Stoneplate and then you see some Wukongs early on. Then you could be like, hey, scout around a bit. Maybe there's one other person going for this comp, but you're like, wait a minute, but they don't have great items for it. I have a better spot for it. Then you could go ahead and go for this comp. But just follow a 3-cost reroll for this and you're going to be good to go. Pretty simple comp to play. It's just a very like picky comp. Like you really want Rageblade, Runons on Jinx. It's like by far her 2 best items. And then like at least 2 stone plates on Wukong, which can be a little tricky. It's also a pretty expensive comp. Any 3-cost reroll is going to be expensive because normally like 1 cost people pretty much always hit. 2 costs people hit like most of the time. 3 cost 3-star people maybe hit like a medium amount of times, you know? So just keep that in mind when you are playing this. It works better if you have like a ton of gold in the early game or are win streaking and have a ton of gold from that. Next comp up we have is Portal Ryze. Very simple comp, just get a portal spatula early on. That way you could hit 3 portal really easily, which makes it easy to hit 6 portal, and then it allows you to hit 8 portal without needing a legendary. And then you just have some form of anti-heal and AP items on Ryze, and tank items on whoever you have in your front line does not really matter. This comp has been in the S tier for the past like 2 months, I believe. So for most people who are viewing this, you already had like 10 lessons on this already. So I won't waste too much time on this. It is a really easy comp to play in case you are new. All you do is do standard leveling pattern. With the portal spat, you can use like Zoe as your item holder, or even Ahri, and then eventually transfer all your items onto your Ryze with the item remover. Whenever you can hit the 6 or 8 portal threshold, that's like an easy sign to level up, even if you lose gold and are not on like a perfect interval. But other than that, just follow standard leveling or fast 8 and roll for the comp. Next up we have is a bit more difficult of a comp to use, and that is Ryze Flex. Ryze does use the same items, so that's one good thing there. You could just go for Ryze if you get like a red buff early on, and then if you get a portal spat, go for the portal build. If not, go for the Preserver Scholar build. The top version of the comp here is much better than the bottom version. I'd say this one is S tier. This one is maybe low A tier. I know Rakan did get nerfed, but this tank line of the Preservers is still much better than like the Arcana people. While the flex comps are a bit harder to play, they have the benefit of being able to be played without having some specific augment. So that's one great thing about the Ryze Flex build. If not too many people are going for the comp and you don't know what to do, you could always find your way into this if you get a bunch of needlessly large rods. I'd say that's only like the soft requirement, but honestly, as long as you have anti-heal on Ryze and 1 rod item, if you get all the champions for free, it's still going to work pretty well. The second image down here is going to be the Arcana version. You're going to be playing this maybe like 20% of the time, whereas the top one you'll be playing 80% of the time if you are going Ryze. It's still pretty good. You'd use Tahm Kench as your main tank, and again, positioning does matter a lot on Tahm Kench, which is why it is a little frustrating seeing some people I know not position correctly because it's literally all on the website. And you may notice in some images I put Tahm Kench on the edge like I do here. Yuumi does not count as a unit right now, and sometimes I put Tahm Kench in between units. So whenever you're playing Tahm Kench, you have to worry about his ultimate ability, which is an AoE stun. He shoots it out and it like knocks up a bunch of people. So it's very, very powerful, right? If you put him on the edge, sometimes he dies without casting his ultimate. So that's why you'll see in some images in the future, Tahm Kench might be where the Hecarim is. Oftentimes in those cases, he will not be itemized with like 3 pure tank items. However, in this case, since Tahm Kench is the main tank, it's okay to put him on the side because he should live long enough to cast his ability because we made him tanky on purpose. You don't have to worry about that too much because again, you're mainly going to be playing the top version. This version's a lot better because Arcana got nerfed a lot. It's still a decent build in case that you get the Arcane Conduit augment that we talked about before. But apart from that, I'm going to be doing the Preserver version in most cases. Next comp up we have is Reroll Mages. Very, very easy comp to build. This one's going to be focused on the 1 cost, so Soraka Seraphine. Very deadly. Ideally, you get both Seraphine and Soraka 3-star, but if you get one of them 3-starred first and you are very far away from getting the second one, you could just start leveling up and looking for like Vex 3 or going for legendaries such as Nora and Yuumi. The base of the build is going to be 7 mages plus Sugarcraft and Vanguard. However, the comp becomes like S+ tier if you get a +1 mage emblem. So I highly recommend, like, you could just hard force this comp if you ever get a +1 mage through like a trainer golem, maybe from Make 'em Cook, or if you get it from the augment. But I will say, if you don't have the emblem, it's still a playable comp if you get very good starts, such as having like tons of copies of Soraka and Seraphine, or you get something like Learning to Spell, which is absolutely incredible in this build. The late game of this comp is going to be Nami and Nora. If you have a 2-star Nami, just throw a ton of mana items on her. That way she casts a lot, CCs everyone, and that buys you a lot of time for your Seraphine and Soraka to kind of finish killing off everything. But since this is a 1-cost reroll comp, it's very simple to follow. So just look up the how to play section down here on the website, bunnymuffins.lol/meta. Next up, we have the A tier comps. So Reroll Veigar is going to be like another mage reroll comp. It's slightly worse than the Seraphine and Soraka one, so that's why it's down a tier, but it's still very good. It's just a little bit difficult to play because, again, 3-cost reroll is a little difficult to hit because it's so expensive. And in this case, you get your Vex griefed by both the other Reroll Veigar players, if they exist, and also the Soraka Seraphine players. So that's why this comp does suffer a bit. There's another comp, Deja Vu Galio, which also suffers because so many people are taking Galios. Even though Deja Vu Galio is performing well, it can be frustrating to play because a lot of people are playing Galio right now. I'm actually curious, what's the play rate? 1.68. For a 2-cost, that's pretty high. Rumbles is higher, oddly enough. It's not quite Zilean level. Zilean, just because he's a preserver, he gets played a ton. Preserver's like the most popular frontline. But 1.68 is still pretty high. But when do you want to go for this comp? You want to go for this comp if you failed going for Soraka and Seraphine. Let's say you start off and you didn't roll yet, and you're waiting for lots of Seraphines and Sorakas. You built like a blue buff or a Shojin already. Maybe you have +1 mage, and you're like, hey, what am I supposed to do? This other guy has Soraka 3 and Seraphine 3 already. Well, you could just go for Veigar instead. So instead of rolling on stage 3 at level 4 or 5, you instead level up to level 6. Maybe you stabilize a little bit if you need to, if you're low health. If not, go to level 7 directly, and then slow roll for Veigar 3 and Vex 3 there. The advantage you'll have over the Soraka and Seraphine player is that you didn't really need to roll in the early game, so you should have more gold, so you should be able to find more copies of Vex and Veigar in like a theoretical sense. But the comp is very strong once you complete it. The late game's the same. You just put like mana items and like anti-heal on Nami or Nora once you get them, and yeah, it's very strong once you hit. Next comp up we have is Faerie Kalista. Again, you can default this comp if you have nothing else to go for. Rageblade works on both Kalista, Jinx, and Ryze right now. So if you ever get a Rageblade in the early game, just slam it. Flex those 3 comps and pretty much have no regrets. Rakan did get nerfed, but doesn't really matter. Doesn't affect this comp too much. Faerie augments are still very powerful. Go to 7 Faerie, play a bunch of carries, get double Rageblade on your Kalista, anti-armor from Even Shroud on someone, and then Rakan with the Gargoyle Stoneplate, plus another tank item, plus the Faerie item, and you're good to go. This comp has been in like the S or A tier for the past month and a half, I think. And I also did like a 3-hour video on this, so go ahead and check that out if you want like a very detailed example of how to play this comp. I go over it at the start of the video, so you don't have to watch like the actual 3 hours, but the link is on the website and it's on my YouTube somewhere as well. Next comp up, it's a bit of a surprise. Eldritch is doing surprisingly well. If we go to trades and type in Eldritch, you see that 7 Eldritch is at a 4.17. Normally, like 7 traits don't do that well. Like obviously Honeymancy is a prismatic trait because you need 2 emblems to make that work. So that one's gonna be the best one by far. Mage is the best comp, so again, that's why they're so high. Multi-strikers, tons of people are playing multi-strikers, so that's why it's at 4.06. But one surprise is actually gonna be the Eldritch build at 4.17. But even though it is this strong, I really only recommend playing this if you get an Eldritch emblem or if you get School Mascot, which is the augment that is built specifically for Eldritch units. But if you do get them, you're not gonna like auto win or anything. You're not gonna auto top 4, but it's like you'll most likely top 4. If you get it in one of your games, you could set up like a betting pool amongst your friends and like ask and like say you're gonna top 4 that game. Like I'll probably put money on that, and over time you'll probably win more than you lose. The only hard part about executing this comp is that you have to decide whether you want to play with Syndra or not. So if you get an early Syndra and you get a mana item on her, she becomes very good. You don't even have to 3-star her. You could just power level up to add in 7 Eldritch as fast as possible, or you could get her to 3-star and hope she kind of kills everything. If not, worst case, you could always just itemize for Nami and Briar. because getting a 1-star Briar definitely does solidify this build a lot. But Nami with 3 Mage active gets a lot of work done, again, only if you have the Eldritch emblem to get to 7 Eldritch very easily, or if you have School Mascot, which gives extra item to the Eldritch Horror. But luckily this comp is very easy to play. You just kind of play it similar to the Portal build if you are going the Nami version, because you're just playing around 4 costs and you have the +1 already. Or you can do the 2-cost reroll with Syndra in the back line. Some people might be tempted to itemize Nyla, but I'd say unless you like get Nyla for free and also have good items for her, I wouldn't really bother with her that much. But Nyla is a good item holder for Briar. So whatever items you build for Briar, you could just throw on your Nyla and then remove them later on. Oh hey look, we have here Tahm Kench in the center. We have 2 other tanks on the side. Ideally, he casts more this way because he doesn't get super focused down. Also, if you have like some tank items, Protector's Vow on Tahm Kench is going to help him cast a lot. So sometimes with the Protector's Vow, you could get away with putting him on the edge of your tank line, but it really depends on the matchup. Next build up we are going to go over is going to be Multistriker Reroll. There are 3 versions here. We have the 1 cost, the 2 cost, and the 3 cost. Strongest version right now I think is going to be the Kassadin. Best items like mandatory is going to be the Quicksilver on him, then the Bloodthirster, then the Titan's Resolve. By the way, all 3 of these comps, they run literally the same exact units. It's just 7 Multistriker plus Shen. And if you get a +1 emblem, all you have to do is take out one of the units. So in the top comp here, when you're doing Jax and Ashe reroll, you could drop something like a Kalista or your Kassadin. In the Kassadin build, you just drop Ashe, and in the Hecarim build, you also just drop Ashe. The one weird thing about the middle comp, and I want to talk about this one the most because again, I think it is the strongest version, is that Kassadin acts more so as a tank than like a pure damage dealer. He still does like a ton of damage, don't get me wrong, but treat him more as a tank. That's why we like putting him all the way on the edge so he gets focused down a bit, stacks up his Titan's Resolve, but also life steals back up with the Bloodthirster. And that's why Quicksilver is so important, because if he ever gets stunned, he can't cast his ability, and he also can't lifesteal. And sometimes he just dies really quickly. So make sure you have a Quicksilver whenever you're playing this. Or let's say you have a game where you don't get a Quicksilver, you might need to second row him, but that could be very awkward as well because you do want him to tank a little bit. I'd recommend just looking at all your opponent's boards and trying to avoid the crowd control units, but that's more of an advanced thing. So while Kassadin is the best build, the easiest build to play is going to be the Jax Ashe reroll build, because it's 1 cost reroll. 1 cost is just the easiest comp to play ever. You just follow the 1 cost leveling pattern. And if you hit, you hit. If you don't, you don't. But honestly, for 1 cost, you pretty much hit like 90% of games, if not higher, by the time you get to stage 4, because you do the slow roll during stage 3, and then you do an all-in roll down on stage 4-1 in a lot of cases. And that way you get your big power spike, beat everyone during stage 4, and ideally bleed out and get a top 4. Another great thing about doing 1 cost reroll is that sometimes when you do this, you get Jax 3 and Ashe 3, but sometimes you get a bunch of Kassadins as well, and then you could kind of combine the 2 comps there. Just make sure when you do that, you have enough items to put on all your 3-star units. One common mistake I see people make when they do reroll comps is that they go for too many 3-star units, and you never want to do that if you don't have items to put on them, because oftentimes it's going to be a waste of gold. Like obviously in a perfect world, we'd have every unit to 3-star, but we don't have enough gold to do that in a lot of our games. So that's why you want to 3-star your units strategically in order to maximize your gold usage. Last comp we have up is going to be the Hecarim reroll. This is like super rare because a lot of players play Hecarim, but if you ever do get it, throw Asterix on him, throw BT and Titans on him. A lot of the artifact items are absolutely incredible on Hecarim. I had one game where I had Silvermere Dawn on him and a Death's Defiance because I had What the Forge. And yeah, you're not killing that Hecarim. I forgot what my 3rd item was, but honestly, you could just drop Trinity Force, Hole Crusher, Gold Collector. Does Prowler's Claw work on it? It might, like, who knows? Oh, I think I had Mittens. Mittens is really good on him too. But I think the other ones are better. Like, probably best in slot. It's tough to say. It's definitely Silvermere Dawn. Actually, no, you don't want Mittens with Silvermere Dawn because this gates your attack speed. You probably just want Silvermere Dawn, Death's Defiance. I mean, 3rd item doesn't matter. Yeah, just like Infinity Force or Hole Crusher, Collector, call it a day. But I'm kind of getting off topic. It's a super strong build only if you get Hecarim 3-star, and you're going to be suffering before you get there. But during stage 3, this comp is pretty strong if you get like an early Hecarim with like good items, because oftentimes he could still one-tap a lot of things in that stage without being super strong. But come stage 4, if you only have 2-star Hecarim, you're probably going to lose a lot of rounds during that time. But ideally, you hit Hecarim 3 maybe during stage 5, and then you probably should win every round after that. Next comp up we have is the Kogmaw Reroll. Kogmaw Reroll is again going to be the new comp, and it works best with the Augment 2 Tanky. This version is going to be S+, and that's the top one right here. You just play Kogmaw, Nunu, Blitz, and then run 3 copies of them, and then add in Rumble and Jinx. That way you get Hunter and Vanguard. And alternatively, instead of Rumble, you could put in a Bastion unit. It depends on who your tank is. But I didn't update the image properly till now. Like, you want it to be Blitzcrank because that's why you play the Rumble for the Vanguard. But if you do get Nunu 3, you could sub in a Bastion over the Rumble because the Sugarcraft honestly doesn't matter that much because your 2 Sugarcraft units are not the carries of the build. It's going to be the Honeymancy Kogmaw in the backline. For items, Spear, Shojin, IE are pretty much the 2 best items on Kogmaw. After that, if you don't have Even Shroud on like your tank or like Last Whisper on like a second Kogmaw, for example, some people like doing that. You really need some sort of anti-armor. But if you don't have that, you could build like Giant Slayer, Deathblade, Red Buff, Rage Blade, Runons, Guard Breaker. A lot of things work in that 3rd spot there. But prioritize the Shojin and the Infinity Edge. So now that we've discussed how 2 tanky is going to be the best version, you still could play Kogmaw Reroll. It's just going to be a bit different because there's the Hunter version. You could go like 4 or 6 Hunter. Obviously 6 is ideal if you get an extra Hunter emblem. And then you just play a bunch of Honeymancy and like 4 to 6 Hunter, as you can see here. But if you don't get that, what you can do instead is go for a 5 Honeymancy version with a bunch of Arcana units, as this would be the no requirement type of build. It's the weakest, but if you get a bunch of Kogmaws and a bunch of Nunus and you don't know what to do, like obviously you have to do some sort of Kogmaw comp, right? This is the version I would kind of go for if you don't get a +1 Hunter. But of course, +1 Hunter is going to be the strongest version if you don't get too tanky. But something like this isn't too bad. Nunu's going to be your main tank because you're going to be mainly re-rolling for 2 cost units. And then Arcana works out pretty nicely because we get both Bastion and Vanguard to buff up Nunu and Blitzcrank. But very decent reroll build right now, and it kind of disappeared in the past month, so if you like playing this comp in the past, definitely try it again. Next comp up we have is High Horsepower Lillia. This is going to be the first time we see this Ahri build come back to life, and it's very, very strong. Like, you could do 6 Bastion, sometimes you get to 4 Bastion if you play more Scholars, if you want to focus more on your Ahri. But most people are going to be playing 6 Bastion because Lillia is going to be your primary carry. Throw BT, Archangels, Titan's Resolve, Ionic Spark, like a lot of things work on Lillia. Any AP or like frontline bruiser item is going to be nice. And if you are able to reroll for Ahri 3-star, use her. All she needs is 1 mana item plus AP items, and she's going to be hitting pretty hard because she got buffed recently. So again, this comp is really funny because if we look up the data right now, it's going to be at a 4.19, which is very, very good, right? But if we look at last patch and we look at High Horsepower, it was a 4.54. So like, what changed, right? In the patch notes, you could Control F Lillia, you can Control F High Horsepower, and like nothing shows up. I guess type in horse. But really the only change that happened was Ahri getting buffed. And how did she get buffed? She got primary orb damage and Foxfire true damage buffs. That's what really put this comp into the limelight, and it is back, and with a vengeance, because it's really, really good. If you are not able to get Ahri's, there is like a second build you could do down here. I don't recommend it, but it's mixing in Multistrikers with Kalista. But really, you just want to focus on the top build over here. Very easy to play though if you do get offered the augment, just like hard force it. Maybe if you have like 2 Lillias on your bench, it's doable, but you'd prefer to have 3 or more. Next comp up we have is Zap Attack Blitzcrank, another good hero augment build. It's mainly played with Ziggs reroll, but since Kogmaw is a bit good now, you can play it with a Kogmaw build as well, as we saw up here, because it's just going to be the same exact thing, but the augments are going to be a little bit different. There's also a Veigar version, not as strong. It used to be stronger, but what's nice about this build is that if you build an Ionic Spark, it works great on both Blitzcrank and the Veigar. That's why Ziggs is more popular than Kogmaw whenever you do this, because Blitzcrank does do magic damage, and with Zap Attack, he does quite a bit. So early game, the Ionic has a lot of value. So pairing it up with one of these top 2 versions is going to be a bit better than the other one. Next one up we have is Ahri Reroll. You could do the 4 Bastion version, or you could do the 6 Bastion version as we talked about before. I like doing the 4 Scholar 4 Bastion build personally because in the Lillia build, High Horsepower, we focus more on Lillia and she's a Bastion. That's why I want to put 6 Bastions in. But if I'm focused more on Ahri, I want to focus more on Ahri, so that's why I put in the 4 Scholar. But they're honestly interchangeable. The main logic you should use is if you have Zoe 3 or not. So if you have Zoe 3, go for 4 Scholar. If you have Zoe 2, go for the 6 Bastion. You could also play 6 Bastion before you get Milio, since Milio is a legendary unit. Playing like a Bard instead of Milio isn't as good, so oftentimes getting like the 6 Bastion might be a little bit better. That would just be Shen and Nunu added in, and obviously if you have Diana, Diana. But she's a legendary, so it's hard to get. There's also the 4 Vanguard version as we see down here. No one really plays this too much, but it is really good. It actually performs better than the Bastion version. Most people focus on the Bastion version right now, but maybe you can be a little hipster and go for the Vanguard version instead. One cool thing you could do is go to the Explorer, add an Ahri, Go to something like traits, and then we can type in 4, Bastion, 4.18, the most played, but Vanguard, not played that much, I know, very low sample size, but it is at a 3.7. It's something that we can't really ignore too much, right? Let's see what happens when we go to 6, change to no minimum, and apparently 6 Vanguard does a lot worse than 6 Bastion, so one thing to keep in mind there. Obviously, sample size does mean something, but it may be worth trying this out before it gets popular, you know, or more people try it out, because I think people just saw like the first person to go Ahri build successfully. He probably went Bastions, and then high horsepower is really good. So people are like, oh, just do the Bastions. Don't even bother with the Vanguards. But maybe the Vanguards work out pretty well. I guess Rumble and Galio are pretty contested. That's the only trouble with this comp, which might explain why a lot of people don't go for the Vanguard version. So scout your lobby, see if people are going Galio and Rumble. If they're not, you could try this one. Next build up we have is going to be the Shapeshifter Flex. They nerfed Shyvana a lot, but I think she's still good. And Smolder 1 is just an absolute monster. And another great thing about this comp is that even though I show the comp with the Shapeshifter emblem, you definitely do not need it. You could just play 3 Dragon instead and drop the Jace. But a lot of people, they're just throwing all sorts of items on Shyvana, doing the fast 9 thing, getting 1-star Briar or 1-star Smolder, completely spikes your team super hard. So it probably is the only viable fast 9 comp. It's just a little situational because you can really only do it from Shapeshifters, and then even then you're only looking for 2 legendaries. It's not like a true fast 9 where you do everything in your power to get to fast 9 and then buy every legendary in the shop. You're going for specific legendaries, so it is a bit different, but super strong comp. Standard level, fast 8, fast 9 both work. And there's also the 1-cost reroll with Namzi 3, Elise 3, which if you get a ton of them at the start of the game is very well worth it. Next comp up we have is going to be Flex, Karma, Gwen, Fiora. Only go for this comp and the Witchcraft Fiora Karma if you have like a ton of items for your team. So on Scuttle Puddle, or if you took an item augment early on in stage 2 and you're flexing into this comp, that's going to be the only times you want to play this build, because there are just too many units to itemize, and if you don't have them, the comp becomes a lot weaker. Too many times have I seen boards with a 2-star Karma, no items, but their 2-star Fiora and Gwen are itemized, but then they lose out to all the Kalista players, because in low item games, Kalista comp is really good, because if we look at the comp again, they really only care about 4 items. 2 tank items on Rakan and 2 Rage Blades on Kalista, because they get the 2 Faerie items for free. And also, none of the other units matter in the Faerie comp. But in this comp, you have like 5 or 6 units that matter. So you need a lot of items for them. Getting Thieves Gloves is really good. Also, that's another way to fulfill the requirement. Build like Thieves Gloves on Gwen, Fiora, then focus on like Karma and tank items after that if you want. The good news is that Karma really only cares about 2 items. She doesn't really need that 3rd one that badly, although it does help. And there's also like a 4 warrior version of this comp running around, so you could try for that as well. All of them are good. Really depends on what you're hitting that game. Next one up is Witchcraft Fiora. People are doing Karma and Ryze with the Witchcraft spat. Both versions are good. They perform about equally. The only issue is that Ryze is a bit more contested than Karma, so that's why I would kind of default to Karma, but it depends what item you have. So if you have a Spear of Shojin, go for the Ryze. If you have a blue buff, go for Karma. That's kind of like the rule of thumb you would use there. And you could go for like 6 and sometimes even 8 Witchcraft if you get 2+1s. Next one up we have is Deja Vu Galio. Very, very strong comp. Again, it's risky because it's contested, because all the players are playing Mage, which means they are stealing your Galios. Mage and Portal units, actually. Like, both of them are stealing your Galios. So it is a little tricky to play. You need to scout heavily or have the perfect items for Galio right from the get-go with like a couple of him already. And that way, like, even if you are contested, you probably win streaked and then you could bleed out a top 4. And if they die, then you get Galio 3. Hopefully you do well after that. But risky comp, but very high reward. Another risk is that you need very specific items for him, but the augment is performing very well. I haven't tried it yet personally, but you could probably even combine him with the mage builds. Just go like Soraka and Seraphine and Galio in the backline. Like, maybe it works, you know, like someone let me know down in the comments, but I'd probably stick to the 6 Vanguard version with the Galio. Probably going to be a lot more reliable. Next build up we have is Reroll Warwick. It got nerfed because they removed his best item, but then they buffed the unit to make him a bit better. And honestly, before, without Corrupted Scepter, it was playable. I'm not going to say it was good, but it was playable. And since they buffed him, it's going to be even more playable. Maybe slightly above average comp. And if you get a spot for it, if you start the game with like 4 Warwicks and 1 of his items, just do it. It'll be good enough. Top 4 with it. If you're able to like fast 7 or fast 8 and hit the 6 Vanguard really quickly, then you might even win the games. I've seen it happen too many times when people did not play it with the item, but honestly, again, it's still pretty good. But honestly, if it could do it back then without the buffs, it could do it now with the buffs. I'd say the 3 items on Warwick are pretty non-negotiable. Quicksilver, Rageblade, and the Titan's Resolve. It's just the best item combo on him. But one exception is if you get the Anger Issues augment. That's one way to just like auto-force this comp, and you probably could do pretty well with it. It's doing a 3.54 right now, so you don't get it till later, but it's like a nice thing to kind of win the lotto on. Next build up we have is going to be Pyro Varus. Works really, really well with +1 Pyro. Do not play it otherwise. It is useless. You can only play this with 5 Pyro, but no one plays Varus, so you get him for free if you get a Pyro spat early, or if you're able to build it in the mid game. It's best if you transition into this comp in stage 4, not so much hard forcing it from stage 1. So if you ever get like a late Pyro spat, or you get like Varus for free and are looking for Pyro spat and get it, it's absolutely incredible. But if not, I wouldn't like plan my day out trying to go for Pyro Varus, so do keep that in mind whenever you do try this. But standard leveling is what you want to do. Varus main damage dealer, Nasus main tank, Smolder in the back line for the late game, and just copy this, put it in your team builder, 4 Shapeshifter, 5 Pyro. Sometimes people do 4 Blaster instead of 4 Shapeshifter. There's also other things you could do with Varus. You don't have to go the caster build. Sometimes with 5 Pyro, people build like Runons on Varus and go for a more attack speed build. It is very possible. It does do well in the data, but oftentimes when you're going for Varus, you already built like the Shojin IE, so don't worry about it too much. But I just want to let you know that other builds are viable on Varus if you do go for the Pyro version compared to all the other versions of Varus. Spin to win Wukong. This is just a Jinx Wukong clone. Oddly enough, even though Jinx Wukong is very, very strong, spin to win is like just above average. It's still good, don't get me wrong, above average is good. It's just not absolutely insane as like the normal build because you have to pigeonhole yourself into the hero augment. Also, it works a little weirdly because you don't see the Wukong augment until stage 3, so it can be a little difficult to kind of plan around. Sugarcraft, highly situational comp, only play if you have a +1 Sugarcraft and a lot of items early, so you have to meet 2 different requirements, which is very difficult to do. So pick your spots when you play this. Don't just play it for fun if you're trying to climb, but if you are just purely trying to have fun, I guess like, yeah, sure, go for Sugarcraft more often than you should, because it definitely is fun trying to stack stuff up. Arcana Varus, again, no one's playing Varus, so you could just go for this as like a super backup comp. If you have no Giga opener, like go for Kalista, and if you can't go for Kalista because no Rage Blades, go for Varus. You're going to be sad about it, but there are games where you are just dealt like not good starts. So if you don't get any reroll start, don't get any emblems, don't get a Rage Blade for Kalista, don't get like tons of items for Gwen, Karma, Fiora, you could still play Arcana Varus. It's not as bad as I'm making it sound, but it is like kind of like a safety school, you know, it's your safety comp. Next one up we have is going to be Blaster Vanguard Reroll. In a world of reroll, other rerolls should be better, and this one is really good. So if everyone's going Jinx Wukong, those are all 3 costs, right? And people are going Vex, it's very easy to hit the Blaster Vanguard reroll because Mordekaiser, Ezreal, and Hwei, all 3 cost units. No one's buying Hwei and Ezreal, I promise you that. Even the Portal guys don't care that much about Ezreal. I mean, they'll still buy them, but like they might sell them if they get a bunch of Portal Spatulas and drop him instead of Kassadin. I see people do that a lot. And Hwei, no one's playing Frost, so you're gonna get these people for free. So this might be the sleeper comp of the week, because if other people are going for those comps, they should be rolling early because they're contested and trying to like claim the comp. And then if you roll later with more gold, you should be able to hit everything 3-star quite easily and ideally do pretty well with it. If we look at 3 costs right now, they are towards the bottom, 3.73, 3.82. That's normally not great for 3 cost reroll because again, like you're assuming that you're getting them 3-star, which is pretty difficult. So if you hit, like they often do well. So the data is a bit biased. Like obviously like the 1 costs aren't gonna look as pretty. It's gonna be a little lower. The 2 costs gonna be a little higher, not quite as high as a 3 cost, but you can see already like 3-star Kogmaw, 3-star Galio, like obviously these have like 2 tanky and Deja Vu. Like they're already at the same level as like the Ezreal and Hwei. And the Ezreal and Hwei are much, much more expensive because you have to go level 7, which I think is like what, 36 gold? And then you have to get 27 golds worth of units per unit. So 27 times 3 for Mordekaiser, Ezreal, and Hwei, that's like a ton of gold, right? 2 cost units for reference cost 18 at 3-star. But again, because people are going for Vex and Veigar, Jinx, and Wukong, it could be kind of like a sleeper pick. Last comp in the A tier we have is going to be Chrono Karma. If you get +1 Chrono, it is forcible, just go 6 Chrono. It's not auto win like it was before, but it's still pretty strong. So go level 8 or level 9, pray you get a Camille, maybe you get a Camille off Carousel, and you'll win a bunch of games after that. Again, it's not auto win, but it's pretty strong. Next one up is we have the B tiers. Frostfire Olaf Varus. Seen better days. I wouldn't play this without +1 Frost. Maybe you need +1 Frost and Winter is Coming to make it work. Because right now the comp literally is just rotting in the B tier. The small buff to it in the recent patch was not enough, I don't think, to really push it up to the A tier or like the mid A tier. So I think put this comp in the back burner for now. Like, yeah, you'll still have spots to play it in. If you get +1 Frost, like, is it good enough? Let's look at Frost Crest. 4.98, 5.01, Winter is Coming, 4.53. I guess if you get Winter is Coming, you might be able to hard force it, but like, even then, I wouldn't really touch this one. I'd only touch it if I meet 2 requirements, so yeah, it's just seen better days. Next one up we have is Ziggs Reroll. It got a lot better recently. Still not like a great comp that you want to plan your day around, but if you hit a bunch of Ziggs, like, go for it with good items, obviously. Katarina Reroll, viable, but again, for most of the B tiers, like, you're not planning your day around this. Akali Nyla. Fast 9, if you get like a super econ start and somehow you preserve your health decently in like stage 2 and 3, Fast 9 is very viable, and it is one of the Exodia comps. It's just super rare to hit because you have 2 requirements that you need, and also the 2 requirements are like very hard to get. It's not like an easy requirement like a +1 emblem. Build difference sucks. Syndra Cassiopeia already talked about. Yeah, that's pretty much going to be most of the comps of this week. How am I going to be approaching the patch? I would recommend finding a Reroll or Ryze angle because those are going to be the best. Like Jinx Wukong, one of the Ryzes, Mage Reroll, Veigar Reroll, Eldritch. That one's kind of like a Reroll with Syndra. Multistriker Reroll, Kogmaw Reroll. All the hero augments are Rerolls. Ahri Reroll. Maybe I Reroll the page a bunch by pressing F5 and get myself a couple more page views, whatever. It's going to be the name of the patch though, right? Personally, I actually kind of like Reroll comps. I find them very therapeutic to play because I just get to put stuff into my team planner and like then I just put the game in Mortdog's hands, you know? Obviously TFT is more than that, but sometimes I like just relaxing and not having to like pay attention to everything every single turn. But let's say you don't get a Reroll or Ryze angle, like pray you just get a good spot for one of the other S tier comps, like getting Eldritch +1, very good. Getting a ton of items and playing Gwen Fiora or Witchcraft Fiora, very good. Maybe you get a Shyvana 2 really early with Shapeshifters and then you just go like Fast 8 or Fast 9 with Shapeshifter Flex. Or you get like some crazy Warwick start and you just go for that instead. Like, those are the things you need to wish for if you do not get a reroll start. So just keep in mind, like, the meta shifted drastically from like 2 weeks ago. Because before that, like, we had a lot of Fast 8 comps and like pretty much everyone Fast 8'd, no one rerolled at all. Maybe 1 or 2 people did, but now it's the opposite. It's like most people are rerolling and you kind of have to hope you get one of the good spots for that and are not contested. But that's going to be it for me for this week. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think of the patch down in the comments below and what comps you are going to be playing. What do you think about the approach up here too? Like, I know this time it's not that detailed as I do the other times, but honestly, like, it's a lot simpler now, right? Because we just need to find the reroll comp. It's not like, oh, if this, then that, then that, then this. It's like, just look at your starting units, and if you can force something, like, go ahead and try to do it. All this info can be found on the website, bunnymuffins.lol/meta, and also for all your data needs, go to teamfight.lol. You could also look up your profile up here. And if you want to see like some of the top players, you could look up the leaderboard. You could see how many units, you could see how many players are in like each rating, and look at how everyone kind of stands over here. But that's gonna be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you all next time.